consonant. Run, ran, ring, write. This consonant is pronounced by pulling the tongue back. As it pulls back, it becomes fatter, thicker, and we can feel it against not just the inside of the teeth, but also we're slightly biting down on it. In order to create a sound, the soft palate lifts slightly. If we didn't do this, there would be no space for the sound to be produced. So we're lifting, we're creating a slight lift, not much, just slight, enough to create a kind of sound, because obviously it's a voiced consonant. So we're biting, the tongue's touching the teeth, it's pulled back. The tip of the tongue, as the back comes up, the tip of the tongue comes down slightly, but it doesn't touch anything, it's just kind of there in the middle of the mouth, and you won't be aware of it. Okay, let's try the sound again. In order to make this sound correctly, your positioning must be correct. The lips come forwards away from the face and around it. And we pull the cheeks in. Right, right. Obviously when I do that I'm slowing the sound down, and you don't hear that so much in a word, right. But if I were to slow the word down, right, that's what we get, run. But when I speak normally at normal pace, you don't hear that voiced so much. Right, run. You'll know you're doing this sound incorrectly if you can't hold on to it and hold a long sound. Some people go right, and their tongue positioning is just wrong. Maybe they're curling it back, or maybe they're moving it up and down. So make sure you're doing it exactly as I say. You may be able to almost get it by doing it in another way. So as I said, moving it up and down or curling back, you'll probably almost get the sound. But in order for it to be correct and to sound really, really British, you need to do it in this way, where you pull the tongue back and you create a bit more space by lifting the soft palate slightly, and it becomes a bit fatter, it's touching the inside of your teeth at the back. Right. So have a go at extending the sound and then doing a word. Right, run, rock, ran. And once you've done this for a while, once you've gone through as many words as possible, when you're ready, you can start to do some sentences. The red rabbit ran over the road. The rock was right in his way. The rabbit jumped over the rock. The red frog did a frog hop. The French rabbit was a red French rabbit. Another thing that's important to consider is that if you have any difficulty moving your tongue around in your mouth, you might have difficulty pronouncing this R consonant. So you might want to strengthen your tongue, and you'll do this by placing it in the middle of the palate and holding something up like a soft sweet or some dried fruit. And you can do this 2 or 3 times a day. That will really help you until you can do the sound essentially. Another thing that people often do is to pronounce the R like a W. One, one. This means they're doing the mouth position correctly, but they're not doing anything with the tongue at all. So they might say, I won in a wet coat, rather than I run in a red coat. So the tongue is really important. Obviously, from the outside, people looking at you will think that your mouth position is correct, but it's what happens behind the scenes, inside of the mouth with the tongue, that's really important here. So you're going to need to do lots and lots of repetition of individual words. Robert, red, rascal, and then lots of repetition of sentences. Robert was a reckless rascal. Another good thing to do in terms of a warm-up is to do a stretch, because we do need to lift this soft palate slightly in order to create space for the vowels that follow the R. Otherwise it becomes quite muffled. Red, run, Robert. And we want red, run, Robert, ran. You see, we're focusing on this area here at the back to get really clear vowel sounds. As I said, this sound can be quite tricky, so I think it would do you a lot of good to repeat this video several times. This can be said for all of the videos, but this one especially. So we've got to consider spelling, when we pronounce the R and when we don't, so we pronounce it before a vowel. We've got to consider tongue and mouth positioning and how important the tongue is. So what not to do with the tongue, so not to flap, not to curl back, but to pull the whole tongue back. That's what's necessary. You'll probably feel it gets towards around about the middle of the mouth. That's about the right positioning. And then you should be fine, as long as you're lifting up the soft palate. If you find that the sound's a bit muffled, the whole word seems to be affected by the R, it means that you're focusing too much on that tongue movement. Don't worry about this to start with, because you do need to focus on what you're doing with the R. But as time goes on, you might just want to warm up a bit more, to do some more stretches, some more expansion. So you start to focus more on the vowels and less on the consonants. And with time, everything will just fall into place.